Okay, so now we go to verse 86. And it's continuing with what we discussed in verse 85. Because it begins with the line, when through practice this becomes firm. And it's referring to the awakening mind. So maybe I just talk about that a little bit, because it's quite hard to develop the awakening mind. One of the reasons it's hard is because we do not really like everybody. It's true. And so we have to deal with the people we don't like as part of our practice. And so one way to do that is to think, actually, it's quite useful that there's some people I don't like, because then that teaches me to develop patience. So just think about patience a moment. Patience is where, instead of being angry with somebody, we kind of feel more calm, more accepting, and then if really there's something that they said or did which, really isn't right, then we find a gentler way, or a kinder way, or a more effective way to react to them. If we react with anger, what happens? We make the situation worse. To be honest, anger only makes things worse. Even if the person did something really bad to you, anger doesn't help. You might feel justified, of course I should be angry because they did that. But does it help? No. But it's very difficult to transform your attitude so that when they do something terrible, you sort of say, what's your problem? Because when they do something terrible, it's because they have a problem. They projected their problem towards you, and they got angry with you, but the problem is actually in them. And so we can transform anger into compassion with this thought, I wonder what's wrong with him today. He's not usually like that. Or something like that. Or maybe he is usually like that, in which case, I wonder what's wrong with him every day. Must be something. And then you start to kind of feel, maybe there's something I could do to help. And when you go to that really upset, angry person and you say, would you like to go for a coffee? Or whatever, they think, surely he or she must hate me because I've been so horrible. But now they're inviting me to go to coffee. And they could melt very easily. Things can change when you behave with patience. Patience is simply being calm when things are difficult. That is really all patience is. Now, for us to develop patience, which we need actually to become enlightened, we need somebody to be difficult. We can't practice patience in relation to somebody who's always nice to us. We can only practice patience with difficult people. So through this approach, we can feel some sort of positivity to everyone. Most people are actually in the middle category. We don't know them. They're like strangers. So just ask yourself, when you meet a stranger, are you naturally open to them or naturally closed to them? We're all different in that. I can't, we have to find out, what's my own normal response? For instance, if I said, there's some visitors from outer space arriving by spaceship, would you be happy or afraid? Do you see what I mean? Some people tend to think, it must be an attack. But other people think, wow, we can meet some really different people now. Probably the person with equanimity will say, okay, let's go and see. They won't assume one thing or the other, but they will at least be open in the sense of being neutral, of being sort of like, let's see how they are, how we can get on, how we can relate. You know, they might come out of the spaceship with some kind of weapon, in which case we need to find some way to talk to them or calm them or whatever. But they might come out of the spaceship with an amazing gift, some medicine from their planet which would heal all the diseases on our planet. And what if we go with a gun and kill them? Stupid. So we don't know how they would be. So in this verse it says, when through practice this becomes firm. How do you know when it becomes firm? You know when it becomes firm because when you meet people, you are open. You are willing to be helpful, to be positive, to look for some good way to communicate. You know what I was talking about before, when we're meeting the people from the other side. You know, at first you might feel afraid, or you might feel angry at things that happened in the past, or you just might feel, oh, they're so strange, I don't understand them, or whatever. But if you can go with equanimity, then you will be open to something developing. You know, if non-violence and positive communication is the only way to resolve problems, which is what, you know, maybe that's the case, you might not agree, but nevertheless, there's something rather nice about that idea, then we have to play our part to become suitable for such a dialogue. To become suitable for that dialogue, we need to develop equanimity, which is what was the meditation. And then when this practice becomes firm, we will find that when we go in the street, or we go into a shop, or we meet some new people in a social situation, even we didn't know them, even if they look like, don't know what he's like, you still go and try to connect. You're still open to the possibility of some good communication. In fact, you will seek ways to build bridges. You will look for the way to communicate and connect with that person. You will try to find out what they're interested in. Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, really? You may think, wow, that's a bit strange. But nevertheless, once you start to show some interest, you're going to go into some interesting conversation, and before long, the two of you could be, comfortable, which is the aim. So at that point, when you can do that as your normal way, then you could say the practice became firm. Then, alarmed by others' suffering, this is the next step. The next step is that when you meet those people and you see that they're suffering, you become, when it says alarmed, it means it affects you. I don't want you to suffer. It's like, actually, the suffering of others is like your own suffering. It upsets you as if it was your own suffering. Something like that. Now, we all have this capacity. I expect you all are naturally compassionate in so many situations. When you see somebody suffering, I'm sure you have this experience of being alarmed. Okay, so this is talking about the bodhisattvas. Then, alarmed by others' suffering, they renounce the bliss of concentration and plunge even to the depths of relentless hells. Now that one might be a bit too much for some of us yet, but this is the bodhisattva practice which we can begin to cultivate in meditation. So first of all, what is the bliss of concentration? So if anybody here enjoys meditation, and probably most of you do, then you know what the bliss of concentration is to some extent. You have some small taste, which is, it just feels nice. It's no more than that. I mean, when we say bliss, it sounds like something, wow, kind of really incredible. And of course it can be. But even now, before we reach that point, we have some pleasure from meditation. Maybe you meditate on the breath for 20 minutes, and at the end you feel, that's nice. Just good feeling, That's what it means. So the bodhisattvas will leave that. They will leave that in order to benefit others. That's the point of these 2 lines. They will leave it, they will come out of it, they will go into a very, very difficult situation to help others. And my guess is that some of you already have experience of doing that at some point in your life. There have been some situation where you had a choice. Let's put it in another way. You could have gone to the beach, or you could have gone to volunteer in some situation of helping some people that have needs, whatever, in a difficult situation where it's not very nice to go there, but you can help. And you decided to do the second one, because in your heart you have compassion. That's all it means. But plunging even to the depths of relentless hells, that is something that we can cultivate in meditation, actually, at this point. We do that by meditating on descriptions of hell, which are described in the Buddhist teachings, and it's pretty terrifying. It's pretty horrible. When you read those, it's so disturbing. Some people just don't want to know about it. They just say, well, that's not true, so I'm not going to study that one. I'll miss that chapter, because some Buddhist texts, they have one chapter about that. They think, I'll miss that one because really it makes me feel too bad. Well, slowly, come to the point where you feel, oh, those poor beings in such a terrible situation. If I could help them, I would. And then you imagine, when it says plunge, this word comes from diving into a swimming pool, or diving into the sea from a cliff or something like that. And it means I would just dive in there to rescue somebody and bring them out. And you can imagine doing that. Just think of somebody that you heard about who did some terrible deeds in the world and then died. And think, that person is in hell. Then practice compassion towards that person by thinking about some of these things, like in the meditation. And then think, I don't want them to have that terrible experience anymore. Even though they did something terrible, I want them to be relieved of that, and then maybe I can just explain to them, don't do that terrible thing again, whatever they did. I mean, that's how somebody changes. And then imagine you plunge into the deepest hell and bring them out. Even though your own body is maybe burning while you go there, or freezing, or something really painful, but you go there willingly and then you bring them out. You can do it in a meditation. But actually, in real life, people go into burning buildings to rescue people. Even strangers, they don't know those people, but they will do that at risk to themselves. So this happens. And probably we're all capable to do that. When we don't know when we might need or want to do that, but it happens. Okay. I'm going to pause in case anybody has a question at this point, or want to share something, some feeling you have from listening to this. Yes, Radha.
What happens, like I feel inadequate,
Yeah.
especially not to people I don't know,
Yeah.
because for them there's no problem. I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
I don't know how they behave. Certain people, you know what the thing you don't like about.
Yeah.
So you come with a predisposition of certain expectations.
Yeah.
But some people, you have disposition about how they behave, but they change like we do, moment to moment.
Yeah.
So each time you meet them,
Yeah.
there's What do you, except for approaching them with love each time, that's where I'm inadequate.
Yeah, well,
How do you, what do you,
mhm.
how do you program your mind so that when you meet each time something else, you are adequate and deal with it in the right way? Wow.
Okay, I think we can all understand this problem because we all know such people or have known in the past. And I think it depends on your own stage of development. You know, this talks about when through practice this becomes firm. So it depends how firm your capacity is to deal with that kind of person. If it's not very firm, you have to be very cautious. It doesn't mean you never meet them, but when you go, you have to have some shield here. You know what a shield is? It's like when you're fighting with a sword and shield. The shield is to protect you. So the shield is usually sort of like, well, I'm going to listen to them, I'm going to stay calm, but I'm not going to let them get to me. The shield is your protection. It's like a layer of armor, you know. So this is before the practice becomes firm. If we don't have any armor, then probably best not to go there.
Those are the people.
If we do have armor, then if we can make some protection, then we can go and meet them, but with the shield. When our practice becomes really firm, though, we don't need the shield. Why? Because with emptiness, we know if they shoot an arrow at me, it's just going to go right through. Because there's nothing solid here for them to hurt. So the best thing is to really change your mind with emptiness. That means to understand that there's nothing solid in this person here. It's just, I don't know, something's walking towards this person. Some mind is like thinking, oh, hello. But I don't have any expectation. I know that this person is very changeable. Whatever they do, I just smile or, you know, say something, or sometimes I even disagree with them. And they maybe attack me for that, but I don't mind because it doesn't matter. Because there's no real me to be hurt. And this is just like a dance. You know, some people go to practice karate or judo. They enjoy fighting. For them, it's like fun. So when you have a relationship with such a person, don't take it too seriously. Just see it as a kind of dance of interaction. And especially if you feel like that, you will smile a lot during the exchange. Even if they're looking very... You can smile. It doesn't hurt you. And something will happen, I think. But I think you can only do that when your practice is firm. And the firmness comes through the bodhicitta and the emptiness. I think the emptiness is very important for that one. Yeah. Okay. So the next verse, 87. This is indeed amazing that they would plunge into the deepest hells. So, you know, this is supposed to be a literal thing, that the bodhisattvas would actually be willing to go to the hells. They even pray to go to the hells. There's one example of one Tibetan Lama, you know, maybe, I think about 800 years ago or something like that. And when he was dying, he was crying. And his followers said, "What's the problem?" And he said, "I've just had a vision that when I die, I'm going to the Pure Land." And they sort of said, "Well, what's wrong with that?" And he said, "I've been praying for so many years to, when I die, to go to the hell realms, to help people there." That's pretty incredible, isn't it? I mean, we're not talking about modern people who don't really believe in hell. This Lama, you know, in the tradition, they really believe that that rebirth is actually possible. But he was willing to go there because he's so much compassion for those beings. So this verse says, "This is indeed amazing. Praiseworthy it is. This is the excellent way of the sublime." Now, sublime means those who have really transcended. And in this case, it means those who have transcended grasping at self through the understanding of emptiness. They no longer believe in this solid self that most of us feel instinctively, that there's a real me here. They don't feel that because they recognized that is not true. There is no real self. I can say me or I, but it's just a label. It's mere name. Okay? Because of that, they became sublime. And because of that, they're able to do those extraordinary practices, which most of us couldn't do. That they gave away their own flesh and wealth is not surprising at all. So there's some stories of the Buddha before, in previous lives, when he was Bodhisattva. In many of those stories, he gave his life, happily, for the benefit of others. The most famous one, probably, is when he gave his flesh to the hungry tigress. I'm sure some of you know that one. This young prince was walking in the forest with his two brothers. They saw a tigress, means a mother tiger, and she was so weak, she was almost died, and her cubs, the little baby ones, were going to die also. And so the three brothers had a discussion. "Oh, this poor creature, isn't that sad?" The youngest one said, what does she need? And then the one other said, "Oh, well, she needs some blood or some flesh, because that is what tigers eat, and then she will gain strength." So then the youngest one, he said, "Look, you just go for a walk." And then he said, "Now the time has come for me to do the great act of giving up my body." He thought, if I do this with a good motivation, may I do this for the benefit of all sentient beings, then it will help me to become enlightened very quickly. So, at that point, he lay down, but she couldn't even move to get him. So then he cut some bamboo, and he cut his body, and the blood came out, and then she licked the blood, and then she gradually ate him. And of course, it's very tragic for his parents, and also his brothers. Everybody's incredibly upset. But this was Buddha Shakyamuni in a previous life when he was still Bodhisattva, and this brought him to enlightenment. This act brought him to enlightenment very quickly, and then as Buddha he's able to teach these things to the whole world. So, and there's also stories in previous lives when he gave away his wealth, like when he was very, very wealthy, and he gave away everything. And of course his parents sometimes quite upset about that, but he just couldn't stop himself. If somebody came to ask for something, he always gave. So it says that they give away their own flesh and wealth is not surprising at all. And the reason it's not surprising is because their compassion is so strong. So then verse 88. 88, page 10. That those who understand, this is quite important to connect this with emptiness, that those who understand this emptiness of phenomena also conform to the law of karma and its results is more amazing than amazing. That is more wondrous than wondrous. So, in the previous verse, he said it's not surprising at all that they gave away their flesh or gave away their wealth. Actually, for us, it's very surprising, but still. He said it's not surprising because he said in the next verse, this is even more surprising. So now I need to explain what he says is more surprising. When you meditate on emptiness of self, which is what I was talking about just now, that there is no real me, there's just many parts, there's many causes, there's many conditions, they come together, and yeah, I can say me, but it's just a name, because those parts and conditions, none of them is me. So me is just a label to a collection or a result of some causes. When you meditate deeper and deeper on that, eventually you experience what's called emptiness of self, or no self. And that is some very spacious, very open feeling in which you no longer grasp at a feeling of me, and you no longer grasp at a feeling of other either. This emptiness seems to be just complete purity, and you don't really experience things in the way you did before. At that point, there's one danger, which is to abandon karma, to abandon the law of cause and effect, and to think, well, it doesn't matter what I do, because everything's empty. Yeah? It doesn't matter, because everything's empty. If I do this or do that, if I go and steal something, if I go and hurt somebody, it doesn't matter, because nothing will come, because everything's empty. So that is a mistake. The reason it's a mistake is because things are empty because of cause and effect. Because the effect depends on the cause, the effect does not exist by itself, and the cause does not exist by itself. So both the cause and the effect are both empty. But empty does not mean non-existent. It just means dependent. Dependent on other things. This person here. You think about yourself, I'm thinking about this person here. It's just depending on causes. My mum and dad created a baby. Then the baby was given some food and drink and some education and grew up and became this adult. This adult depends on causes. It does not exist independently. If it existed independently, it would have to come from nowhere. But it came from causes. This body and mind is made of many parts. Hands, head, legs, and then the mind has got many parts, like the mind that sees things, the mind that hears things, the mind that smells or thinks things. There's many different parts of the mind. When something has many parts, you can't say it exists by itself. Body. Where is the body? Is it this finger? No, that's not a body. Is this finger a body? No. Is this? No. Is this? None of these parts is a body. So where is the body? The body is a label given to the collection of the parts. And it's the same when I say me. Me is a label given to a collection of the parts of the body and the mind. Okay. When we realize that, it's called realizing emptiness or understanding emptiness. It doesn't stop the law of cause and effect. Still, what actions I do will have effects, because the effect depends on the cause. If I do something helpful, I will get a good result. If I do something harmful, I will get a bad result. It's quite simple in a way. If something bad happens to me, it's because I did something bad in the past. If something nice happens to me, I did something good in the past. That is more or less the law of karma. Nagarjuna, the writer of this text, is saying it's really amazing that the bodhisattvas who realize emptiness, in other words, they don't believe there's some real me here anymore, that they still believe in karma. And they act and live according to karma of cause and effect. That is because they understand that cause and effect and emptiness are actually different ways of looking at the same thing, which is just reality. It's the way things exist. It's the way things happen. Things happen in terms of cause and effect, of actions and so forth, but their nature is emptiness. Any questions? Does everybody really understand what I just said? Please, if there's something I said which I could clarify, just ask. Is it logical, what I said? It's logical. That's a start. If it's logical, it's a good start. It means you understand it intellectually. That is the beginning. Then, when you go into life, everyday life, after this weekend or whenever, you start checking. When something good happens to you, ask yourself, could it be a result of some good karma? When something bad happens, could it be as a result of bad karma? When you do something helping somebody, could you feel, oh, there will be a future result, which is something good? When you harm somebody, could you think, there could be a future result which is not so good? That is more or less living according to the law of karma. Now then the next thing is emptiness. Who is this person who is creating these causes or experiencing these effects? Is there a person here or not? Not really, not deeply, not inherently. But nevertheless, there is happiness and unhappiness. At some level, relatively, sometimes it feels good, sometimes it does not feel good. And when it feels good, it's because of good karma in the past. And when it doesn't feel good, it's because of bad karma in the past. So cause and effect can work even with emptiness. In fact, to be honest, it can only work with emptiness. Because if there's no emptiness, then everything is fixed. It means if we're in a bad place, we'll never be able to leave it. But it's not like that, is it? If we're in a bad place, we can climb out. And also, unfortunately, sometimes we're in a good place and we fall off. It's like that. That's because of emptiness. I think you had a question.
Yeah, you said something like that. Doing something good.
Can you speak up, please?
Doing something good, and you think about what does it affect on your own karma. But I think when I'm doing something good, I'm not thinking about
No.
karma.
No.
Thinking about doing something good.
That's true. That's true. It's a good point. Supposing during the day you're very helpful to somebody. At the time, of course, I'm not saying think about that. But later in the evening, when you're thinking about the day, you could think maybe there'll be some karmic result. I think what you're saying is don't grasp at some good result. Don't do good to people in order to benefit yourself. If you're going to do good to people, do it for their benefit. I agree. It's really more that I want us all probably to try and have an understanding that karma is actually the way things happen. And that's not always intuitive for us. In fact, it takes a bit of time for us to get used to that idea. Yeah, but no, it's true what you say.
But looking at the very short term, when you do something good, you feel good. So that
Oh, yeah.
is your...
That's your reward.
difference.
Yeah. Well, it's a good sign. But it's said that when you complete an action, a good action or a bad action, and it's done, it's finished, the result came and you feel okay, then that leaves some potential on your mind stream. And that will ripen at some future time. Maybe in terms of what life you get, maybe in terms of some activity or environment or tendency in that life. So, for instance, some children are born with a tendency to kill insects or little animals. Some children are born with a tendency not to do that. Definitely, they would never think of doing that. So they say that this is a karmic result from previous life, because one of the karmic results is to have a tendency to do that thing again. Okay? So that's just one example.
I was thinking, well, sometimes you do something good, like Sarah says, okay? You do something
Yeah.
And for instance, religious people,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes feel really frustrated because they say, look at me, all I'm doing is good, and yet I'm not getting anything back.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so here the
Yeah.
process is completely different.
Yeah.
You don't do it to get.
Not immediate.
Exactly.
And I think that applies in many ways in the world, not even for religion, or even people who they think, oh, the situation, the political or social situation is hopeless, or the environmental situation in the world now is hopeless. And then they think, oh, I won't do anything. But I always say to them, no, just do some small positive thing. It will create a seed for the future. Maybe before you die you won't see the result of that. But, it's worthwhile to do something positive in any dark time. We are living in a dark time. We don't have to pretend it's not dark. It is dark, but even in the dark time, you can do positive things. And so I always encourage people, do something positive because it's a seed for the future. You may not see the result, don't worry. And so it's a bit like karma. Karma is similar to that. It's just more in terms of your personal continuum. Again, we can think, well, do something positive. Because even if you don't see the result in this life, it will help in future, in general. Okay. How are we doing? 10 minutes. I think we do a little bit more of the text. 89. Even if those who wish to save sentient beings are reborn in the swamp of cyclic existence, they are not sullied by the stains of its events, just like the petals of a lotus born in a muddy lake. This is really, really beautiful, inspiring. If you've been to India, you've probably seen a lotus growing in a muddy lake. Has anybody seen that? They're quite common in India, but probably other countries too. Do you have lotuses in Israel?
In Israel, I didn't see, but I saw it in pictures. You see
Right.
where they grow and how.
Some places.
You do. So the main story about the lotus is this, that even if where it grows is really dirty, really muddy, like lots of mud that would stick to anything, the lotus comes out and the petals come and they're absolutely perfect. There's no stain on them at all. And usually in the Buddhist teachings, they're talking about the swamp. Here it says swamp. You know what a swamp is? It's a very muddy place. But they usually talk about it in terms of excrement, like filth. Smelly, horrible. But out of that comes the beautiful lotus. Now, as you probably know from pictures like this one and this one, the Buddha always sits on a lotus. So when it says a lotus, it's referring to the lotus where the Buddha will sit. And we create the lotus through our bodhicitta. The bodhicitta is the result of benefiting others and working with emptiness and compassion, wisdom and method to benefit others, which is through the journey of our practice. The result will be that we create this lotus. I don't know if it's literal lotus, probably it's a kind of, some kind of lotus made of light. But the main point, although that came out of the swamp of the afflictions, in other words, we're in samsara. Our mind is full of negativity. We have anger, attachment, jealousy, hatred, pride, all these different negative emotions, grasping at self. This is our swamp. But if we practice bodhicitta, out of this swamp will come the lotus. And it comes because we transform those afflictions. We actually take the nutrition from the swamp to grow the lotus. The lotus doesn't grow completely separate from the swamp. It grows within the swamp. Now, in terms of us, this means Don't run away from the fact that your mind is deluded and has, negative emotions and all that. Just say, okay, that's where I am now, but within that, I'm going to practice. Earlier we discussed the idea that somebody that you have difficulties with, somebody you're angry with, you can start to create something positive. That is an example of taking something from the swamp, something smelly like anger, and transforming it into something positive, compassion, for example. And the same applies with desire and attachment. Sometimes we're very greedy. We want a lot for ourselves. It could be money, it could be food, it could be possessions from the shops, it could be new clothes, whatever it is you like, you're never satisfied. You want more, 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 more. Okay, so that is a result of the affliction of desire. Now, if instead of wanting more, more, more for me, you manage to transform it and say, oh, I want to give, I want to share, I want others to have those things, that turns into love and generosity. So then the affliction of desire is transformed into love or generosity. So it's another example of things coming out of the swamp. Pride. Pride is a real problem. Thinking you're better than other people. You go into a new situation, maybe you come to a Dharma course, you didn't know anybody, you're starting to think, am I better than that person? Oh, that person looks better than me. Oh, maybe I'm as good as that person. In whatever criteria you decide. It could be looks, it could be wealth, it could be status, it could be intelligence, it could be spiritual level. There's many ways we judge people. That is connected to pride and jealousy. Now, how do you transform those? You transform pride into feeling, I can see my own faults. I'm not terrible, but I'm not great. I can't see the faults or the good qualities of others. I don't know how they are. So why don't I just treat them all as if they are special? Because everybody is special, including me, but I'm going to focus on them. That brings what we call humility. Humility is really treating everybody with great respect. Then what about dealing with jealousy? Wanting to be as good as that person who's better than you. Instead of feeling negative, just rejoice. Rejoicing is where you feel, oh, it's so good that that person is so beautiful. I'm so glad they can afford those wonderful clothes. Oh, it's nice that they're so intelligent. That's so fortunate for them. Oh, they have a wonderful husband or wife. And even you forget about yourself. You stop feeling so self-centered, and instead you just feel pleased that they have those things. It happens in culture, doesn't it, with celebrities. You look at these famous people and you're judging them. Oh, look at her, she's got this, this, this. Or look at him. Who does he think he is? All those kind of critical minds coming about those famous people. Instead, just think, I hope they enjoy their fame. Because the truth is, often they don't, actually. I mean, they craved it so much. So yeah, I hope they enjoy it. If not, I hope that they will find some peace. You can rejoice in the good things they have. Anyway, those are some ways to transform the swamp. Now, transforming the swamp enables the lotus to grow. The lotus is our own positive mind which comes through this bodhicitta. And it is a wonderful thing, how our mind will become better. It'll not only better but happier and more beneficial to others. It's a slow process. It's not just quick. It comes gradually, like growing a flower. And that lotus is not sullied by the stains. It means it's not dirtied by the stains of its events. So even though in the growth we go through many events, and some of them are challenging, sometimes we're in difficult situations, where there's lots of arguing or whatever. But if we go with a good mind, even in the difficult situation, we come out of it better, personally. That's really what we want. We may benefit others, but certainly we will grow. And it's just like the petals of a lotus born in a muddy lake, and those petals are beautiful. So we could feel the real beauty is the petals of bodhicitta. One thing. Once when Kajala had a meeting with some nuns in Nalanda Monastery, she had a meeting just with the nuns, and she said, many people worry about how beautiful they are. She said, you shouldn't worry about that. She said, the real beautiful one is the one with bodhicitta. It's really nice to just think about that. It's something, am I thinking about external or internal? Where is the real beauty? Okay. So, would anybody like to share anything just before we finish? Some feeling of your own about this? What do you think?
I'm going to copy that phrase, and it is just so beautiful. I don't know why I'm really attached to that phrase. There's something about it. The swan, and it does something.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask a simple question. Maybe I'm mistaken. I always thought that lotus represents wisdom. I thought someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not.
Yeah.
Just
The lotus, it can represent wisdom. In fact, often it does. And then the cushion, like it might be a moon disk, that would, in that situation, that would represent compassion. So then the tooth together is the wisdom and compassion. But usually when they say the lotus born from the muddy lake, they're really just talking about the general growth which produces enlightenment, on which the Buddha sits. So all these symbols are a little bit flexible according to different contexts. Okay, so maybe that's okay for now. And